Learn the latest developments surrounding Jules Kounde, as now Barcelona are coming in fierce with competition to try and sign our centre-back. Moving on, we have to continue with the massive updates surrounding Lukaku and his loan return back into Milan. Learn the latest behind the fees, replacements, and a deep dive into the updates surrounding replacements for Lukaku. Another big video plus more content dropping today, you guys. It's going to be a massive day on Blue Lions TV, so don't go nowhere. If you guys are happy to see me back, if you're happy with the content and the videos that Lukaku could potentially be going, then hit that like button. Please help me get over 3k likes for today's video. And without wasting any more time, I think right now we have to start things off by talking about the latest news involving Jules Kounde. Now, over the past few weeks, there have been little hints coming out from Spain that Barcelona are trying to find a way to capture Jules Kounde away from us. These reports do come out from Sport, a very reputable outlet in Spain. And essentially, it's been known for a while now that Xavi is a massive fan of the player, and Xavi sees Kounde as a defender of the future due to his flexibility, due to the positions he can play, due to his ability to carry the ball forward as well too. Like, you guys deep it for a second, yeah? You look at players like your cover, you look at your players like Frankie de Jong, but I've always kind of thought this as well too. Imagine if you had centre-backs whose dribbling skills were that good, similar to wingers, but they could literally progress the ball by themselves. You know that the weakest defenders typically tend to be centre forwards. So if defenders had press resistance, well then you can imagine what can happen when it comes to playing out from the back. So it's only natural that Barcelona are trying to find every avenue possible to try and find a way to get a deal done. Now the reality is this: Kounde has already agreed a 5-year deal with us with significant wages to go as well. The final thing we're waiting for right now is the official confirmation of a bid, but I'm going to explain to you why exactly we're going to have to wait a little bit more in the second part of today's video. Now, a report has come out from the Evening Standard literally just like a few minutes ago, suggesting that the club are still very confident about securing the player. We know that Kounde was in London a few weeks back to finalise terms and agreements too, so you're not doing that for nothing. But at the same time, we're not going to disrespect Barcelona's interest because it does offer more insight behind this deal currently. And the reality is, in football, anything can happen in the 11th hour if you're not on point. So let's actually deep dive into what is happening at this point in time. Now, reports from Sport in Spain have suggested that Barcelona have been looking to test the ground now for a few weeks behind how a deal could actually be feasible. The reason why they feel confident now is due to the delay now in actually finalising the move for Kounde. And the reality is, Barcelona have also been in advanced talks themselves in discussions with the player, so we can't forget that. It does seem like Kounde, of course, would be open to a move to Barcelona if they were able to meet his economic satisfactions, because the reality is the contract offer we've offered the player is literally that life-changing contract that he's been waiting for, and he's not going to settle for less now. Now, they have held talks with representatives around Kounde, not necessarily just yet with Sevilla, because before you start talking to clubs, you need to come with something concrete. You have to test the waters first by talking to the player, reps, etc, before coming in with that official bids. Now, originally Barcelona had hoped to offer some players in exchange in this deal. Two names that came out were Sergio Dest, who doesn't want to go to Sevilla because he wants to remain at Barcelona, as well as Clement Longley, a long-term target of us in the past and a player that literally Barca signed from Sevilla. But the reality is Sevilla just can't afford his wage demands, even if they offered 40% of his existing contracts. The reality is this: Sevilla only want money, and they will only sell Kounde to the highest bidder, meaning that if we were trounced by someone, Sevilla will look to push Kounde onto that club. So let's see what happens. Now, of course, we can't take things for granted and be complacent right now. If Barcelona somehow found a way to, ease some of their financial woes at this point in time, then Xavi sees Kounde as his #1 centre-back. The last thing I want to see is them taking Christensen and then taking Kounde from us. So we're going to have to react quite quickly to get this deal over the lines. Of course, we know that with his recent surgery he had, a very minor surgery, this is not going to affect anything. And potentially, maybe, it hopefully drops the price a little bit, because the report that came out today suggested that Sevilla would sell him for 50 million, which is like 5 mil less than original fees throughout this entire period. Still though, we can't take things for granted. Hopefully we get the Lukaku deal wrapped up as soon as possible so we can start to finalise some of these deals now. Before I go, I'm still very confident that Kounde will be our first signing of this new period under Todd Bowley. He's a defender of the future, so let's make sure that we don't mess things up. So you guys, that's the first story out of the way. Now we focus on, the big story today, and that is everything surrounding Romelu Lukaku and replacements for the player too. Now let's discuss the news first surrounding the updates around Lukaku. Some positivity now. I do want to say quickly before I continue on though, Lukaku right now is the main focus at the club. Everyone's putting 100% of their resources behind getting this deal concluded, because when Lukaku goes, that's when flexibility then comes back into what we can do in the window. Because if anything flopped and if Inter Milan couldn't find a way financially to have the player return back, then that's going to affect a lot of what we can do in this current window. Currently, Inter Milan have offered a £6 million loan fee plus promises to fulfill his entire wage packet as well too. This still falls short of our valuation for the player. We've dropped that 20 mil plus loan fee now down to around 10 to 12 million euros, which is around like 8 to 10 million pounds. Still though, the concrete news we do know is that this would be a 1-year deal if this goes through, and there would be guarantees to buy at the end of the loan spell. So essentially, we'd have to hope that Lukaku absolutely kills at Inter Milan. So essentially, we have to make sure that Lukaku absolutely smacks it at Inter Milan next season, because with that guarantee to buy at the end, I wouldn't be surprised if it included things like, after a certain amount of appearances, it would be automatically triggered, or after a certain amount of goals, the deal would be automatically triggered. We need to reclaim that money back, and we have to do it in the best economic fashion. I know as a fan base at times, as football fans, we're very emotional about our sport, we're very emotionally invested, but when it comes to the business money side, we can't play around with that and let sentiment affect what we can do with that money. Still, there's a willingness from Inter Milan now to come back and to find options now to get this deal over the line. It seems like they will come back with a higher loan fee offer instead. And potentially there's some very interesting news involving a player exchange, which is also a possibility now in this deal. As I said, we know that Inter Milan's recent £5 million loan fee has been rejected, but they aren't too far away now from upping the offer, and it does seem very likely that Lukaku is actually destined now to return back to Inter Milan. Still though, this is the time now to discuss replacements for the player. Of course, as I've been alluding to for a while now, just based on what I've been seeing with the system, based on how so many great number 9s have struggled playing under Tuchel, it's just quite obvious with this new style of football we're seeing that we haven't typically seen at Chelsea Football Club. I just feel that it favours a completely different profile of attacking players, so it's no surprise that the players that are being linked with as replacements are completely alien and different to all the number 9s that we typically see. The emphasis now is on signing attacking players who are multifaceted, that can play in different positions, players that press high with intensity and aggressiveness as well too, and players that can play in those inner channels and those half spaces and between the lines too. So this is where options now in your Gabriel Jesus's, Christopher Nkunku and Raheem Sterling are all valid options and players being looked at currently as replacements for the player. At the same time though, before we can literally change our entire attack, that is going to involve a lot of players leaving. And reported by Nazar Kinsella, who's again another Chelsea correspondent that has those real connects and sources, the main players are Timo Werner, Ziyech and Pulisic, who Tuchel deems surplus requirements. In the case of Werner, listen, I've had a lot of criticism for the player, but I'm always going to accept the fact that we haven't necessarily played him to his best strengths. He's never ever been a striker that gets off of 1-2 chances a game, so I have sympathy for the player even though he isn't the best fit for us. In the case of Hakim Ziyech as well too, and Pulisic and all these guys in particular, 4 out of 6 attacking players excluding Havertz and Mount have all struggled interpreting what Tuchel wants, with Tuchel regularly using these guys in different positions to try and find a use from them in the team, which tells you everything you need to know about how the manager sees them and what we have to do in like pure footballing terms, of course, to move on and progress as a club. Ziyech has interest with Man United. I wouldn't be surprised if they made a move for him. I rate this guy highly, but we'll just never ever use wingers out wide like that realistically, so I can see why he has to go. And it's the same thing for Pulisic, even though I do have to say though, yeah, he's got a lot of minutes on the Tuchel, but for me it's the quality of minutes. I haven't seen him play in his best position as much at times. I think he is someone that could offer more, and this is coming from a guy that didn't even want him here to begin with. So what does that tell you about how I see the player right now? So those players are most likely to be the ones out the door. So right now, let's talk about the updates on all the targets being looked at. With Gabriel Jesus, we understand, of course, that Arsenal are the favourites currently, and they remain the favourites at this point in time. Now, that makes a lot of sense now that our priorities are focused on Lukaku, because if the deal fell through in any way, that means he's going to stay, and that's going to affect how we build and plan the team for next season, which is something we have to accept. Of course, Arsenal are favourites currently. A report came out today suggesting this, but I wouldn't be surprised if in the 11th hour, once Lukaku's future was deemed, confirmed, we made a surprise move for the player. That wouldn't surprise me. The reality is, though, is that we haven't accepted the offer of taking the player just yet, so this is why Arsenal are favourites at this point in time. Moving on to Raheem Sterling, we understand that he is very open to a switch to London. However, even though he has 1 year left on his deal, he would still command a fee of around 50 to 60 million pounds, which is a lot of money. But at the same time, for a guy that's got Premier League experience, tons of experience in Europe and for his national team, and who regularly gets double digits for goal contributions every single season, he could be a safe buy, even though he might not be the most exciting buy that us fans want to see. Of course, we have news on Christopher Nkunku as well too. We know that RB Leipzig don't want to sell him. We know that they're offering him a new contract with a renewed release clause to entice the player to remain for 1 more season. However, they ain't going to say no to offers between 80 to 100 million for the player to sell. That's how much it's going to cost if a club is serious to sign the player. And I understand some of the arguments potentially against doing this. Number one, how many big name guys are flopping under us? We're literally selling a 100 mil player to replace him with someone else. I'm not too sure about that, Nini, but in my opinion, I'm just not worried at all. I mean, it's not my money if I'm being cynical. And the game's the game at this level if you want to try and win the league and be one of the big boy clubs. It's just how the game works. I think Nkunku for me would be the perfect embodiment of what Tuchel wants in his attack. I think how he's not even like a real striker like that. I kind of see him as like a Iniesta type of player, someone that can operate between the lines, that has incredible finishing, that's a match winner, that has incredible skill in tight spaces too. We need more players like that. And I think he complements Mount, he complements Havertz, and Dembele when he comes as well too. I think this guy will be a world-class player. I think he's proven that consistently now at RB Leipzig. I think for me, I'm not expecting any attacking player for us to be getting 30 goals plus in a season. I think the plan is going to be to spread the goals out over many attacking players. And I think Nkunku is someone with potential to really elevate what he brings with that, and is someone that could bring you 30 to 40 goal contributions per season. So that's my thoughts on him. And of course, we have to end with the final player now, and that is the big news surrounding Dumfries, because it does seem like us and the club are currently talking with Inter Milan over a possible move in exchange of Dumfries coming our way and Lukaku going that way. Now, Inter Milan have slapped on a 45 million euro valuation for the player, which our board is absolutely saying no to, because come on, we're not going to pay that money for you. But what's interesting though is that there's a strong possibility that Dumfries may be a loan signing in our way, which of course would probably allow for some very smart accounting at Inter Milan to allow the sell of him in our direction, of course accounting for Lukaku going back to them in their direction, and of course signing that Barcelona on top of that as well too. I think if it's on the loan, I'm okay with this, knowing that he's a good player, even though I don't think he's world class, but I don't think everyone has to be. I think he would benefit the squads. I think he's a great personality. I like how he plays for the Dutch team. He seems to have more freedom when he plays with them as well too. I think he can hack the Premier League due to his strength, and he is a good player, even though he's a more rotational option at Inter Milan. So this could be a smart workaround, of course, to allow Lukaku to move that way, us to get competition now for Reece James as backup, essentially, and to find a very cost-effective manner in allowing this deal to go through, so we can start focusing on signing players right now and bringing them to the squad for pre-season. So I think doing it this way doesn't necessarily rule out any future moves to Livramento or Lamptey or anyone else, for example. I'm okay with this. I'm tired of seeing wingers playing as a wing back, and I just think it's time now that we strengthen and bring competition in those areas. So you guys, that's all the big news that dropped today. There's going to be more content coming out. I'm releasing a video on the Premier League fixtures, as well as probably another news video, because so much is coming out right now. So forgive me for rushing things and talking so fast. I don't want to make this video 30 minutes long. And on that note, I'm Nini FC. This is Blue Lions TV. I'll catch you guys later with some more videos. Cool.